Hello and welcome to Today in the News on Vanguard Live. My name is Precious Chukudi. Of course, it's a rainy morning, but we hope you are covered wherever you are. And we'll be starting off for the front pages of the papers this morning, starting off with Vanguard. And main headline says COVID-19 hits states IGR as IMF allays fears. The writer says reverses GDP projection on Nigeria from 5.4% contraction to 3.4% as state records a 26.5% decline in revenue. And on COVID-19 update, we have Lagos records 41 new infections as confirmed cases rise to 59,583. You can see that on page 27. And still on page 27, it will be irresponsible if leaders don't solve Nigeria's problem, says Oshibajo. And on page 8, police can't end SARS, says Spokesman Frank MBA. Federal government not sincere on SARS reform, Falana. You can see that story on page 8. And on page 6, missing boy Soti Tobire church leader, 5 others sentenced to life jail. And on page 7, 6 killed, 3 injured in fresh plea to attack as rep faults rules of DSS in killings. And ONDO decides 2020, Akeredolu Ajayi Jegede signed peace pact, promised to accept poll results. Akeredolu Jegede split ONDO SDP. ADP candidate denies stepping down for Jegede. You can see that on page 9. And we have a photo story. Glow launches new tariff plan. We can see Tenny, that's Tenny the entertainer. She's a new brand ambassador for them. And away from Vanguard newspaper, we'll move straight to This Day newspaper. And on This Day newspaper, main headline says Northern elders join clamor for restructuring. It says Nigeria failing. INEC expresses concern over violence in Ondo. Akeredolu Jegede Ajayi commit to peaceful poll. US demands transparent election. Also, stories above on This Day. NBS states FCT's half-year IGR slumps by 81 billion naira. The writer says Lagos Rivers leads in revenue generation. Jigawa ranks lowest. And away from This Day newspaper, we move straight to the Punch newspaper. And on the Punch newspaper, main headline says Nigerian economy unstable, directionless under Buhari, says Economic Society. The writer says Nigerians' debt fast becoming unsustainable, may reach 34 trillion naira. LCCI warns Economic Advisory Council parades the best 11 economics, says presidency. And stories about federal government orders probe of 2.6 billion naira diverted school feeding cash. You can see that on page 10. And on page 8, travelers to UAE must have COVID-19 results, accommodation, NIS. And stories beneath, we have missing child, Ondo pastor bags life imprisonment, courts lampoons police. You can see that on page 4 and 5. And away from the Punch newspaper, we move straight to The Nation. And on The Nation, we have main headline says Oshibajo, Super Bowl must end in people's interest. Executive legislature must solve Nigerians' grave problems. APC PDP in final push for votes. Stories above, we have Abiodun gives Big Brother Nigeria winner Lekon house and 5 million naira. Also on page 6, SARS won't be scrapped, says police. IG not sincere on ban. Akure cleric Sotito Bire bags live jail for child kidnap. ADP ask tribunal to nullify Obaseki's victory. And that's all we can take on the front pages of the paper this morning. We're moving into the newspaper analysis segment where I'll be joined in by a guest in the studio, and it's in the person of Mr. Dayo Akintobi, a publisher of Ilupeju Today. Stay with us, we'll be right back after this break.
Hello there, my name is Victor Oguinka, and you're welcome to the midweek edition of Today in the News, and of course all of those newspapers across the Federation, and looking at the major headlines everywhere.
Over 1,000 people are benefiting from free medical services provided by the FCT chapter.
Arsenal's first club transfer record signed Pep.
Hi, welcome back. And if you're just joining us, it's still Today in the News on Vanguard Live. My name is Precious Chukudi, and this is the newspaper analysis segment where we get to analyze the front pages of the papers. I have with me, who is going to be doing that with me, Mr. Dayo Akeredolu, publisher of Illupeju today. Good morning, Mr. It's good to have you here.
Good morning, Precious. Always a pleasure to be here.
All right. So we're starting off with one of the main headlines that says COVID-19 hit states IGR as IMF allays fears. And, the IMF chief, that's Kristalina Georgieva, said despite a flood of government spending, the global economic downturn sparked by the coronavirus pandemic will not be as bad as originally feared. What is your take on what she said?
That's very good news. It means that the economic downturn is not as severe. Of course, when COVID came in with the lockdown and all the other collateral damage, jobs were lost, the economies were ground to a halt, bankruptcies, companies closed, and so that has a spiraling effect on economies worldwide. So the IMF, the World Bank, and all these other types of agencies took a look at it and predicted back in the heyday of the lockdown that the economic impact of COVID would be this much. They are now looking at it and saying, well, it's not as bad as we had anticipated, because now second quarter results have come in. They've seen that GDPs in various countries actually perform better than what they expected. So what they're saying is, let governments continue to do what they've been doing. Let them pump money into the economy. The only thing that keeps an economy going is spending, consumer spending, government spending, public-private spending. You have to spend money because there's a trickle-down effect. When government starts spending at the top, it initiates projects, it employs contractors, those ones in turn employ people, they buy materials. So it's a trickle-down effect on the economy when government is spending. So what the IMF is saying is that governments up to this point have done very well in trying to boost economies through stimulus packages, government spending, palliatives, trying to protect jobs, create new jobs, things like that, to where they've been able to dampen the effect of COVID on economies to where it's not as bad as we anticipated in the beginning.
All right. She also likened, the crisis to World War, when leaders forge a better word in the worst possible situation. What ways can our government create a more equitable economic system for us?
That's a tough question. The first thing is we have to have the right economic team. Part of what the Economic Society is complaining about yesterday is that some of the people who are pulling the levers of the country's economy are not the best qualified people, not the most competent people. So we need to have an economic management team that is professional, that's committed, that's experienced, and they can make recommendations as to things to do. There are various things at a macro and a micro level that governments can do. There are things where they can have the CBN adjust interest rates. They can make it easier for businesses to borrow. They can create enabling environments for businesses to thrive. At the end of the day, the most important thing for an economy is employment. People need jobs. When they have these jobs, they earn a salary. When they earn a salary, they can meet their obligations. When they meet their obligations, the money they spend trickles down in the economy. So the number one factor for any economy to be rebooted is employment. So that should be the priority for the government, is what do we do to enable businesses to thrive and employ people. Of course, we don't want civil service to employ more people. The civil service is already over bloated. We're paying too much on recurrent expenditure to pay salaries to civil servants. And also remember that the civil service does not generate income. All the work they do is administrative. It doesn't put any money in the economy. So really where the jobs need to be created is in the private sector. So what government needs to do is to create an enabling environment that encourages investors, that encourages entrepreneurs to create jobs, to start businesses, to expand existing businesses, whatever it takes for more people to be employed and to reduce the number of people who are losing their jobs.
All right, you spoke about we need to keep spending money, but I want to ask that if we increase our spending rate by just 1% of the GDP, would it create, more new jobs?
Yes, every additional penny that you put into the economy has a knock-on effect whereby that money you're spending has to be serviced. It has to be serviced in the production of goods and services. If you're spending 1 naira and I'm spending 1 naira and everybody else is spending 1 naira, well, we're spending that money on those products and services have to be produced. And that money that we want to spend has to find an outlet to receive it. And that outlet to receive it will be produced by labor, by those who produce goods and services. So the more we have to spend and put in the economy, the more it will generate employment.
All right, how do we keep spending and then we keep borrowing? How does it work?
Well, the borrowing that government does is different from the borrowing that you and I do. The kind of borrowing that government does is the borrowing to build infrastructure, to build the kind of infrastructure that creates an environment that business can thrive. First of all, it improves the quality of life of our people. If we build roads, for example, lives are saved, goods can go faster back and forth, people can get to work faster back and forth and be more productive. So when government borrows money, it's not like you see a repayment plan immediately that, okay, I build this bridge, this is how much is coming, I'll pay back in so much time. But it's an intangible benefit whereby quality of lives are improved, the infrastructure itself enables ease of doing business, which then generates profit. So you have to borrow. You actually do have to borrow, but you have to borrow sensibly. You have to borrow within your means, and you have to borrow with a viewpoint to how do we pay it back. It becomes irresponsible if you don't have the means to pay it back, or you borrow more than you can afford to pay back. So the government looks at it and says, okay, we're expecting XYZ amount of revenue in the next 1 year, in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years. So let us borrow a percentage of it to gain the benefit today. We can borrow against tomorrow's money to better our lives today.
All right, let's go on a short break, and when we come back, we'll discuss on further issues. All right, welcome back, and I still have Mr. Dayo Akintobi in the studio, and we've been talking about COVID-19 update with what's done to our economic system. But we're moving straight to what the Vice President has said, that we need to hold our leaders, accountable. Now, the Vice President said it would be callous and irresponsible if those who are elected into office do not come together to solve our grave and life-threatening problems confronting Nigeria on a daily basis. Are our leaders really, solving our problems if you take a closer look at what's happening?
That's what they're there to do. Whether they achieve it or not, the jury is still out on that for this particular administration. But yes, ostensibly, that is their raison d'etre. The reason for existence in that office is to improve the lives of their constituents, to make things better for each and every one of us. I think what the Vice President was alluding to is that there needs to be a handshake across the table between the executive branch and the legislative branch, that they need to cooperate a little better for the betterment of the citizenry. I think what he was saying was that it should not all be left to the executive alone, and the legislature should not see itself as being in competition with the executive, and that they have to cooperate for the betterment of society by way of the legislature. Yeah, they pass laws, but the executive administers the laws that the legislature passes. So there has to be some degree of cooperation, not antagonism and not competition, but cooperation for the greater good. That's essentially what the Vice President was trying to say.
All right, our country has millions of extremely poor people, and even with the COVID-19 pandemic, which has worsened employment and poverty, how can the standard of our living improve?
That's a tough one. We've been deluded into believing that Nigeria is a very rich country. Nigeria is not a very rich country. If you look at the total revenue we generate from oil and you divide it by the population of 200 million, you will realize that the per capita that accrues to each person is very, very little if you look at it on a world standard. And things like the devaluation of the naira and the fact that we're dependent on imports means that we have very little buying power in terms of the goods and services we need on a daily basis. So Nigeria is a poor country pretending to be rich. We're actually not very well to do at all. So that complicates issues in terms of how do we improve the lot of the lives of our people. But as I said earlier, the first thing is employment. And employment comes from education. And education is tied to you being healthy. You can't be productive if you're not healthy. And if you're healthy, you need to be educated to be employed. So there's a domino effect. All these things are interrelated. So government should start by improving the lot of education. I'm very happy with what the presidency did a couple of days ago, where they said anybody who is in the teaching profession, they've extended this number of service years. I think before, after 35 years, they had to retire. That's been extended, I think, to 40. At the age of 65, as a teacher, you had to retire compulsorily before. It's been extended to 65. I know people who at 70, 75 are still compos mentis enough to be able to lecture professionally and impart knowledge on people. But in the past, at age 60, they're consigned to the dustbin of retirement, and all that knowledge is wasted. Yet we don't have enough resources in the education system to cope with the population that needs to be educated. So the presidency is on the right track by revamping and restructuring the terms and conditions of teachers in this country and what makes them able to perform effectively. So education is on an uptick. Let's look for the same measures in healthcare, in the healthcare sector, because a healthy workforce is a productive workforce. So we need to also ramp up our healthcare industry sector. And then, of course, as I said, let us take these educated people and begin to train them. I think the world has changed now to where we are no longer looking for professionals like doctors, lawyers, engineers that we used to in the old days. Today it's things like artificial intelligence, robotics, coding, all these type of things. Like COVID has taught us now that the whole world economy has changed. You don't need to go to an office to do your work anymore. So there's a lot of virtual and remote work that's been done. That opens the door to a whole new range of jobs that were never considered before. So there's opportunity. Government just needs to create the enabling environment for people to take advantage and exploit those opportunities.
All right, let's look at the federal SARS and brouhaha that's been happening of late, and the Nigerian police force PRO, that's Frank MBA. He said that SARS cannot be scrapped because people have been calling for the ban of SARS, and the hashtags on Twitter and social media has been end SARS completely, and he said because of its potency in combating crime. What's your take on it not being totally scrapped?
SARS has overreached itself. It's no longer just speculation. There's evidence, clear evidence that they've had extrajudicial killings, maiming of people, unlawful arrests, harassment, intimidation, corruption. So SARS has overreached itself in so many ways. When that agency when that particular squad was set up within the police force, it had a noble intent. The issue of armed robbery was getting out of hand in the country, and they felt they needed a specialized force to focus on armed robbery. Well, SARS has all of a sudden gone beyond its remit and extended into stop and search, extended into checkpoints on the road. None of those things have anything to do with armed robbery. And what they've been using that as an opportunity to do is to harass and intimidate people. So the IGP has said, no more, none of that. You can't be on the road in mufti. You have to be properly dressed and identified. But there is a need for, if SARS is properly administered and with good oversight, their area of specialization is key. And I'll tell you why. Notice that the trend of armed robbery in this country over the last several years has actually decreased. Sure. Back in the day, we used to hear armed robbery everywhere, in houses, in people's homes, on the street, in traffic, banks, you name it. But by and large, that trend has gone down. So I believe SARS is effective in what it was created to do, but their excesses are what need to be reined in. And I think that's what the IGP is trying to do now.
All right, would you say that the federal government has been sincere in reforming this special police unit?
Every few months we hear they are banning this agency, they are banning that agency, they are curbing this agency, they are curbing, and then the next month you see these people running riot again. So it opens the door to speculation that it's a superficial effort, that is not a deep-seated desire to reform these particular specialist squads. But I think the hue and cry in the public, especially about SARS, I mean, for a Naira Marley to be saying he wants to carry out a protest because too many young boys. In this day and age, all you need to be is a young boy with a tattoo, with a laptop in your hand, in a nice car, or sagging your jeans or wearing a face cap backwards, and SARS immediately pulls you over. No matter how innocent you are, they pull you over, they start harassing you, intimidating you, they seize your phone, they look into your phone, violate every kind of privacy of yours. So definitely they need to be curbed, and I think that's what the IGP is trying to do. Let's wait and see a few months from now before we make a judgment as to how sincere it was. If 3-4 months from now we see SARS going haywire again on the road, then we know that it wasn't a sincere effort.
All right, speaking about the issue of human rights violation, and how best can the government deal with this issue associated with state actors?
I don't understand state. I don't
now,
understand.
okay, the police is supposed to protect us,
yes.
And then this is what happens when your rights is being violated.
Yes.
Then how can the government put in their best to ensure that when you speak out for things like this, because of the police supposed to protect us, they don't, it doesn't become a sidelined issue.
Well, that's the beauty of democracy and civil society, is that you have the right to protest. You have the right every 4 years to reevaluate who are those leading you and make a decision and make a change if you think it's not being done right. Human rights and civil rights abuses have been a part of humanity since the beginning of time. That does not make them acceptable. And what democracy does is it gives you a mechanism by which to resist, protest, and refuse to have your rights violated. So I think that as long as we have a genuinely democratic government, they will permit protest. When I say protest, I'm not talking about violence. I'm talking about peaceful protest, peaceful resistance. I think the media has a major, strong role to play in speaking up about violations of human rights abuses. And I think if the government itself is committed to seeing this not happen, maybe even the judiciary can begin to take a strong stand. For example, I saw where somebody was locked up unlawfully for something, and a court awarded a major sum of money against the police. So that will give the police pause next time they think about doing something like that. That, hey, wait a minute, there's a price to pay if we are proven to have violated somebody's right unconstitutionally.
All right, let's look at ONDO decides, and just for 4 days now we're going to be putting in a new governor. But then, if you're going to rate how Ondo State has been towards the election and how Edo State has been, what would you say?
Ondo is a bit trickier because you have 3 strong candidates. Edo was only 2. Ondo has 3, and they're all strong. The incumbent is going for re-election. His deputy governor is going for election under a different party, and the PDP candidate, this state used to be a PDP state, and they still got a very strong PDP presence in the state. So it's a bit contentious when you have 3 formidable parties going up against each other. Actually, I think the fact that there are 3 gives the incumbent an advantage because the opposition is split. I also think he can run on his record. I don't know. I've heard conflicting statements about his record. Some people say he's done very well. Some people say he's not done anything at all. That's up to the Ondo people to decide. But incumbents always have advantage of their record to run against. You can show categorically the last 4 years, this is what I did. Grade me or evaluate me on my record. So he rises and falls or sinks or swims based on his 4-year tenure before. So it'll be an interesting election to watch. I'm a bit worried about flashpoints like Owo and some places where there have been skirmishes and where too many people are squabbling and there have been pockets of violence in the run-up to the election. I'm hopeful that maybe INEC will play its role properly. The security forces will do like they did in Edo. If they can replicate the steps they took in Ondo. Only problem with Ondo is it's got a lot of riverine areas that are not easily accessible. Those areas are usually where the problems come from because it's difficult to secure them, it's difficult to monitor them, it's difficult to transport election materials in and out. So let's hope for the best.
All right. So do you think the peace accord that is being signed, between these, various political actors would, solve the issues of violence? Because we've been hearing violence really of late, in that area, and it's really scary. I mean, because the people of Edo were really scared because they thought that it was going to be that deep for them. But do you think that with the peace accord and everything would make the election a very, very peaceful one?
Well, peace accords are signed by the candidates themselves, not their supporters. And the candidates are not the ones who foment the violence, it's their supporters. So the fact that they've signed a piece of paper saying we will try and do our best to keep this peaceful, they have to translate that into a message back to their supporters, and how many of them are sincere enough to do that. For me, the key thing about that peace accord, the key element for me was the fact that they all signed that they would accept the outcome of the election. That's big. What they've said there is we will not contest. How many people in Nigeria have lost an election and not contested the results? Oh, they rigged here. Oh, there was ballot snatching there. Oh, there was intimidation of voters here. So I would like to see that truly happen because I think that would be a big plus for our democracy if people actually lose and accept that they've lost. Edo right now, Yamu is saying he's not going to contest the results, but he will carry on with the lawsuits that were pending prior to the election, which also have the potential to derail the outcome of the elections anyway. So I think that's the big thing coming out of Ondo is that all 3 candidates said that they will not contest the outcome of the elections. Let us see that. That would be a big day in Nigerian democracy if it plays out like that.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Dayo Akintobi, publisher of Illustrated today. Thank you for joining me this morning.
It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, you can remember to like and subscribe on all our social media platforms showing on your screen, as well as if you want to find out up-to-date stories, or you can go on our website www.vanguardngr.com to find out more on our top stories. Of course, make sure you're staying where you're safe and you're not under the rain. My name remains Precious Chukudi, and thank you for watching.